folks. This is Saturday News with Views, being done without my camera person, Mr. Pathan. But here we go. Today I want to talk about fishing. I don't know how many of you remember yesterday I mentioned in the actions that were being planned by Pompeo. One had to do with taking action against fishing, and you would wonder why that's important. And I'd said that fish is going to be like tomorrow's gold, right? And I had posted something some time back, which maybe in 2018, 2019, that I'd picked up from the foreign policy press, that I want to read out to you folks and tell you why these Chinese are doing FTAs left, right, and center, trying to grab islands, trying to move into Jamaica, Barbados, Maldives, Sri Lanka. They've had a problem in Chile. If you remember, I don't know how many of you read Score, the global press, but they've had a problem with fishing in the waters that belong to Chile. Now, here's what it is, right? It's an article which says, for ages, humans have always depended on the sea. For as long as there has been fishermen, there have been conflicts over fish. And the Brexit has also had a huge emotional angle about between the fishermen of France, Spain, and Europe versus those of Britain. Fishing critical, folks, okay? And though it may seem anachronistic, the odds that a squabble over fishing right could turn into a major armed conflict are rising. Now, why does he say that? He says between 2017 and 2050, the number of humans on Earth will rise by 29% from 7.6 billion to 9.8 billion. Okay? Most of this is going to come in Asia, Africa, and Latin America, the growth. Add to the increasing population, you're improving standards of living. The global demand for protein will outpace population growth, increasing between 32 and 78% according to some estimates. Meeting that demand could require an additional 62 to 159 million metric tons of protein per year. And it's obviously not going to come from beef and protein and land-based animals. The reason being all these new viruses that keep evolving in China, and that's essentially because of the search for protein, right? He says the current is going to come from fish, and it's not going to come from ponds, because even there that's kind of plateaued out. The current annual global catch of seafood is 94 million metric tons, and around the world, the wild population of both migratory fish such as tuna and less mobile species such as flounder are being overfished. Scarcity has already forced Chinese fishing fleets further and further afield in search of their catch, and they are found everywhere, folks. They are absolutely thieves. He says, for years, China has subsidized and provided armed escorts for forays by its fishing fleet into neighboring EEZs, and assertively enforced Chinese law on non-Chinese fishermen operating in contested waters. This is also about South China Sea, okay? China currently consumes a third of the global fish catch. Officially, they have made it clear that they believe that meeting the expectation of their increasingly affluent population is key to preserving political stability, and thus is a core national security interest, right? I believe that this is what I'm saying, right? I believe the Chinese and Maldives FTA is all about fish, and the rest is just a cover up. Too small a market for Chinese exports, and Maldives really does not export much. As it is, India is facing rogue Chinese fishermen in Andaman and Nicobar Seas, so we better be prepared to counter this looming threat on our fish resources, as they will be critical to our food security. We already have an example of the constant fight between the Indian and Lankan fishermen, and the issue between India and Bangladesh over their famous fish, right? Now, here we go. First, I told you about how they've landed in Jamaica, and they've also landed in Barbados. China blamed for Barbados ditching Queen. Now, why would you think, right? Of course, if the Caribbean is critical for security, and kind of, like Cuba was a security threat to the United States vis-a-vis Russia. The same thing with Jamaica and Barbados. I think both these countries are playing with fire by jumping in with the Chinese, I think, right? And for India, it's critical because these are part of the Commonwealth. India needs to double down. There's a huge linkage between India and these places culturally because of a lot of Indians who are settled there. In fact, I think the Barbados Prime Minister is currently probably is Indian. I think. Right. So India really needs to put, I mean, I know it's really far, but India needs to get out there and put its flag higher than the Chinese flag, folks. It's absolutely important. And it's all about fish. And as we talk about all about fish, there is this, as I said yesterday, US Navy Secretary Inver Sajay's new fleet for Indo-Pacific region. And now in order to protect our Andaman Nicobar and to ensure that they don't get inroads, as I said yesterday, into the Bay of Bengal via their port that they're developing in Myanmar, is for us to headquarter the Quad in the Andaman and Nicobar Island, folks. And it's important for us to think about that. And as we say, we are the only ones standing tall as far as China is concerned. We bumped them or banged them on their face as far as BRI was concerned, and we've shown BRI for what it is to the rest of the world. We've kind of stood up to them in the Himalayas, and more important, we've walked out from the RCEP. Never done before, but we did it, folks. But having done that, what is critical here is no RCEP re-entry. That is absolutely, also I believe that completely, even though if Anand Sharma and maybe Sham Saran think otherwise, I don't think so. I think those guys are living in some la-la land if they think this relationship, that this means that our look east policy has failed. Absolutely it hasn't. There's no connection, right? But having done that, India needs to speed up talks with the United States and European Union. And as we had rightly said, RCEP akin to FTA by stealth by China, with China officials say, and that is true, folks. A little readout on China. Interesting readout by Sujan R. Chinoy. The Forgotten Facts of China Occupied Kashmir. And these are very important as we make our policy, and where we go into all these negotiation, debates and discussions, these become very important, right? What he says is, China's support for Pakistan is motivated by a desire to perpetuate its own territorial grab in the Trans-Karakoram Shaksgam tract of Kashmir. And this is what I've always been saying. While they are firing the gun of Pakistan's shoulder, and whoever's watched me, whoever's read my post knows that, right? And that's true fact. History underhand methods. It says, historically, China played an insidious role in changing the frontiers of Jammu and Kashmir through fictitious claims and unscrupulous alliances with local chieftains. China exploited the great game between the British India and Russia in the late 19th century, and I have mentioned the same thing. The British actually let us down. It pitched territorial claims far beyond the traditional frontiers of Xinjiang. It gradually crept into areas in the Dumbash Pamirs and Karakorams well south of its frontier along the Kunlun Mountains. Okay, folks? There he says, the British eroded the traditional frontiers of Maharaja of Kashmir in the region around Shahidullah and also those of Vasal, the Mir of Hamza. Okay? And this collusion allowed China to claim the whole of Aksai chain in which it has no historical presence. And this is the collusion between Pakistan and China. That's what it is, folks. And as Harsh Kakkar writes towards, so while this is happening, right, keep this historical perspective. 4 Jaish terrorists gunned down in Jammu and Kashmir encounter. Amazing. Jaish always in play, right? One wonders why. There's something really, really nasty going on here. And rightly so, it says India, EU condemn the use of proxies for cross-border terror. And at this stage, China needs to be nailed totally, folks. Totally. What do we have here? Harsh Kakkar writes towards disengagement and disescalation. What he writes is interesting. The possible reason which compelled China to open discussions for de-escalation is impact of weather on Chinese troops. Further, the fact that hardened Indian troops hold heights that dominate Chinese positions, enhance their vulnerabilities and restricts further options leading to a stalemate. Hence, they, however, have opened up Doklam, they've opened up the east, which is where we should be careful and not put our guard down. At some stage, China would be compelled to state to its people that its attempts to regain its claim lines have failed and it was forced to pull back. I guess when will that happen? There are reports that Chinese delegations to the talks have been objecting to the news reports and views in the Indian media, which places China as being under pressure and having proposed the withdrawal. India, being a democratic country, has a free media whose reporting cannot be curbed, folks. So China is worried. They don't know how to put what has happened here, the reality, back to its people. While concerns of the strategic community are genuine, which is like walking off Kailash Hills, right? Are genuine, they must trust and accept that those at the helm of decision making have far better inputs and understanding of Chinese intentions, strengths, and weaknesses. This I find as the most fallacious statement, folks. I personally don't think any of our folks have this understood it completely. And will they throw us under the Indian Armed Forces under the bus? Absolutely they would. They would be fooled, like they got fooled by the fact that this build-up of 50,000 troops was not aimed at India. They got fooled. Why? Because the Russians said so. This statement by General Kakkar, absolutely, to me, rest is okay, is bizarre. Our foreign ministry officials have constantly been fooled by China and Russia, and history is absolutely is testament to that, right? What should we be doing here? How to save Kabul from Saigon fate, right? President-elect Biden inherits a worsening situation. The Taliban will redouble their efforts to force our remaining US troops. They can't seize the cities as long as we are able to bomb them, but they control much of eastern Afghanistan. So what they remember is in 72, US signed a peace treaty that left thousands of North Vietnamese soldiers in South Vietnam. A few years later, North Vietnamese tanks rolled into Saigon as the world watched them. And this is a lesson that the US should learn. They should learn, leave 2,500 troops, and more importantly, probably add some more. And India out here can be of assist, right? As Trump signs off, he says, Joe Biden's advisors have said they favor keeping a residual force in Afghanistan, but they can't know how many troops that requires until they consult with General Miller and Chairman of Joint Chiefs Mark Milley. Let's hope the generals can follow Mr. Trump's orders in a way that offers Mr. Biden more options than retreat after he's in the White House. Important, folks. They need to retain presence there. Very important. Now here, there's an interesting, we've been having a debate whether India has the capabilities, the money, we've got a defense, and I said earlier that it is important that we take the leasing option. Ajay Shukla has this article here which says defense equipment to lease or not to lease. But they're important points. Well, there's the Secretary of Defense, this lady called Call, is suggesting that it may not be a good option because you really can't have L1, L2, L3 in leasing because only one person shows up. That's okay, right? That's the way you do it. All private airlines are doing this, right? Why are they doing this? Just to reduce cost, right? And it's just not, we won't be the first ones. He says, Kumar, however, pointed out that leasing has been adopted by many armed forces around the world. He said the US had leased ships to augment military capabilities World War II. Now forget that. Similarly, the Royal Air Force in the UK has leased aircraft including P-8 maritime reconnaissance aircraft. The Italian Air Force has leased 34 F-16 fighters from the US Air Force, and to ease pilot transition from the F-104 to the Eurofighter. Like I said, so the fighter aircrafts are being leased. I think that is the next thing we should do, and we should also be looking out for something like this. UK defense spending. The United Kingdom is to beef up its post-Brexit defense spending after Prime Minister announced a further 21.8 billion would be added to the existing budget, roughly 55 billion. Important for India to coordinate its budget with the United Kingdom. I think there can be a lot of benefits for doing that in terms of technology, in terms of availability. Most of our armed forces are pretty in sync with each other, since we've adopted everything that was British in the anyways, right? So folks, I think many options are available. We may not have the money, but if we have the guts and the glory and some fine thinking, I think we can create enough space for ourselves to take on the malicious China. Jai Hind.